The year was 1974. A piece of land formerly owned by John Barrymore, about 60 acres in the Malibu Hills, was purchased by a fledgling engineer by the name of Richard Kaplan. Kaplan and his friend Mike Pinder, who was a keyboardist for a British band in the mid-70s, they both grew rather tired of the constant expenses of Los Angeles-based studios and decided to move further out towards the Malibu Hills. Pinder, who was the funding behind the project, took notice of Britain's failing economy in the 1970s and decided to invest his money out on the west coast of the United States. Kaplan eventually allowed him to build a studio on his property. With Kaplan supplying the land and Pinder supplying the funding, they filled it to the brim with state-of-the-art equipment and hired some of the best studio aides from all over Los Angeles. And right off the bat, it was already shaping rock. Pinder grew impatient and eventually sold his shares of the land to Kaplan, and they really didn't do a whole lot until the late 1970s. By the early 1980s, Kaplan's new assistant Michael Hoffman began scouring all over Los Angeles and bringing in world-class talent by the likes of Motley Crue, Megadeth, Fleetwood Mac, and Olivia Newton-John? I'm reading that correctly? Anyway. Well, the first major step Indigo Ranch took to shaping the world of rock came in 1985 when a fledgling band by the name of Megadeth actually recorded their debut. It was alright. Wonder whatever happened to that Dave Mustaine guy anyway. Yes, I know. Besides Megadeth, Indigo Ranch wouldn't actually begin to change the course of rock until around 1993. By 1993, this young producer by the name of Ross Robinson discovered some band from Bakersfield who'd already put out a demo tape and got signed by Epic Records. Tasked with just $14,000, which was still a drop in the bucket back in those days, Ross ended up booking Indigo Ranch because he found Kaplan's rates were actually much cheaper than those in LA. After months of toiling, he finally got those guys from Bakersfield to churn out their debut album in 1994. Named after our favorite grain, the album would later go on to sell 2 million copies in the United States. Epic Records was so surprised by Korn's progress with the first album, they massively increased the budget, and Korn ended up going back to Indigo Ranch to record the follow-up Life is Peachy in 1996. Not only would the album sell just as well as the previous one, but multiple bands began asking Ross to produce their debuts. That same year, Brazilian thrash legend Sepultura actually hired Ross and went to Indigo Ranch to record their groundbreaking album Roots, which quickly went gold in the United States. Eventually, in early 97, a fledgling band who was befriended by Korn, all the way from Jacksonville, Florida, hired Ross to record their debut at Indigo Ranch as well. A band entitled Limp Bizkit. Was that the end? Hell no. Even Vanilla Ice got in on the fun in '98 and recording his Hard to Swallow album. That's the weirdest nu metal album I've ever heard. In early '99, a band from Des Moines, which featured 9 people, decided to ask Ross to produce their debut. Sadly, not one record executive at Roadrunner took this band seriously. I mean, come on, they're a bunch of masked dudes from Des Moines, Iowa. What were they ever gonna do to change the rock world? As you can see, they were once again proven wrong. It quickly went platinum while Slipknot was touring at Ozfest, and eventually became Roadrunner Records' highest-selling record up to that point. Even ex-Sepultura frontman Max Calavera had actually ditched Sepultura by that point, who'd gone solo with his own band Soulfly, had also decided to record his debut at the ranch. And guess what? Another newcomer! Machine Head, longtime thrash and groove metal champions of the Bay Area, had also decided to cash in on the nu metal boom. Sadly, as nu metal's rise into the stratosphere began, it also began the downfall of Indigo Ranch itself. Tired of the same formula being recycled so many times by so many other bands, and eventually the movement growing into such a commercial smash, Ross Robinson decided to hang up his cleats and moved on from Indigo Ranch by the end of 1999. The years of partying had taken its toll and also had the advancement of the digital age. Nobody was interested in using old analog equipment in some little lodge up in the Malibu Hills anymore. What made things worse actually were the fact that illegal downloads actually reduced the amount of royalty checks that Kaplan was receiving from a lot of these recordings. Sadly, Kaplan descended into alcoholism, and eventually by 2007 he sold off the ranch entirely. And sadly, the original ranch and original property would be destroyed with a corral fire. Kaplan's last request with the new owners was to put a rehabilitation clinic where the ranch used to be. He eventually got his wish, as he hoped no others would suffer the same alcoholism that he had to endure for years. And sadly, Kaplan himself actually passed away in 2014 due to complications from leukemia. It's sad now, realizing on the grounds of this rehab clinic, there once used to stand a studio that made rock legend. Today, there's very little remnants of the original building and lodge. I guess the only lasting remnants, I guess you could say, would be the records and the massive movement and subculture it spawned. This one little lodge sparked a movement that impacted rock to the point that we haven't seen since. But seriously though, fuck indie rock.